Fear Factor, 15 Minutes to Your Ideal Retirement, Webinar 11. How does overcoming fear and making smart decisions in your money life spill over to all of your retirement decisions? Hello, this is Adrienne Berg with financial advisor Ronald Gielach, answering your questions in a 12-part webinar series on how to retire and live the life you love and deserve. This is the 11th webinar in the series, and you can find the other 10 at ronaldgielach.com. That's G-E-L-O-K. In the preceding webinar, we discussed what kind of team you need to navigate the shark-infested waters that lie ahead. In this webinar, we go further and ask how overcoming fear, false evidence affecting retirement, and making smart decisions in your money life spill over to all of your retirement decisions. Ron, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
You know, way back in our first webinar, we lamented that people do not spend time planning for retirement, partially because they can't answer the tough questions, like where they want to live after retirement, or even what they plan to do after retirement. What does a system of tax-free income, the type that we've been discussing and that you construct, how does it help answer those other life questions?
Well, Adrienne, it's just so important to have systems in place to generate income that's needed in retirement. And it's really interesting because when we counsel husbands and wives all the time, and typically one spouse will have a more aggressive investment temperament than the other. So not too long ago, I'll give you an example. I had somebody in the office, husband and wife, and they were on the verge of getting into an argument with each other because the husband's point of view was that the market keeps going up and he wants to keep participating in the upside of the market, and he does not want to get safer because the wife's view of safety was FDIC insured CDs. But really what she was saying is that we can't afford to go through another 2008, and we need to have a strategy to not lose 30 to 40% of our retirement savings. So where my role came in was not just asking the questions about, you know, where do you want to live and how do you want to spend your time, and is travel important to you, and do you like cruises, and you know, how much time do you want to spend with the grandkids? And yeah, those are important questions, but first we had to put together a plan to make them both happy. So what did we do is we identified that what the real problem was a retirement income gap. We knew how much was going to be coming in the way of Social Security income for the two of them, but they had both worked at different jobs over the years, and husband had worked for 6 different employers, none of whom would have offered a traditional defined benefit pension plan, and so there was a gap between what was coming or what was to be coming from Social Security and what was needed to pay the bills. So what did we do? We looked towards insurance contracts that offered guarantees to put in place a plan to generate income. Once we knew that the income gap was solved, that we had a plan in place or a system in place to cover the gap between real-world expenses and Social Security, then husband was okay taking risks with some of the money, and the wife was okay simply because she knew that she was going to be okay. She was protected.
You know, we have a saying, security brings surety. What we mean is if you're secure financially, you get surer about the rest of what you want to do with your life. So people might say, gee, I'm going to move to Florida or California or Europe. Can they? How can you select a home, even know what price range you're in, if you don't know your financial future? Once that's set, then the other questions can be answered because, you know, we all know that the knee-jerk question on the retirement form is, do you like to travel? Well, most people will say yes. What does it mean? It doesn't mean anything until they know how much they can spend on their trips, and then they can really make a plan. But most people are derailed by these fear factors. And, of course, that's the name of this whole series, False Evidence Affecting Retirement. And basically we mean retirement decisions. So can you tell us some of the false evidence, some of the things that people really believe and act on that aren't true, and why they're hearing things that are wrong perhaps in the media or what they read or from friends?
Well, sure. I mean, let's put it this way. $1 million today is not what $1 million was a generation ago. Granted, $1 million is a lot of money. But sometimes a person will say, well, gee, I've got $1 million in my 401ks and IRAs, so therefore I've got enough to retire on. Well, if that $1 million turns into $600,000 or $700,000, that's a huge difference. Yet if a person says, well, look, I'm just going to do planning the way that I've always done things because that's the way I've always done things, and I'm going to rely exclusively on modern portfolio theory, which means designing a diversified plan of risk-based securities, well, our view is that that's not enough in today's world because we see a perfect storm brewing of an equity market poised to go backwards in the next bear market cycle, and at the same time, rising interest rates sending the bond market hurtling backwards. So this is why we feel that if we just do things the way we've always done them, it's a prescription for disaster. So we want to educate clients on what else they could and should be doing to make sure that the income they need is going to be there for them.
So part of the false evidence is we've been really trained. We can see pie charts in our sleep. This much should be in conservative. This should be in large cap, small cap. Generally, the fund managers and the fund companies have created that kind of buy-in program. And, it was wonderful because I can remember the days when people had stockbrokers if they were wealthy. And if you weren't wealthy, you had a toaster and a bank. And that was it. So mutual funds really did help us make a breakthrough and start thinking about our own personal finances. But now times have changed, decades have passed, and we do need much more sophisticated systems because we're going to be living longer. And you have to be able to believe in yourself to do things a little differently. Now, you talked about not running with the herd, but why do you think that's so essential to having a good retirement lifestyle, at least a good financial retirement lifestyle, by not running with the herd? What do you mean by that?
Well, if you think about it, nobody cares more about you and your family and your spouse than you do. That's just human nature. We care about the people that we love. And so if we just kind of do what the herd is doing, if we just stay invested exclusively in equity-based mutual funds because our perception is, well, gee, that's what the majority of people are doing right now, and that's what's working right now, and then we get a bear market, what have we really accomplished? So it's so important to get people thinking for themselves and thinking about it in terms of, well, what's my plan B? Plan A might be just, the market just keeps going up like this forever or for the next several years. Plan B is, well, what if that doesn't happen? So we want clients to have a plan B.
Now, one of the reasons that it's hard to have that plan B is it often does involve annuities, it involves insurance, it involves other areas where you can get some specialized guarantees and tax savings. And they really do work. But we rarely hear about them. Sometimes if we hear about something, it's usually negative because bad news always sells. But even the negative, we hear very little about these products. Why is that, in your opinion?
Well, I think, unfortunately, it's because there's a lot of financial advisors who follow the herd or who take the path of least resistance with people. And let me give you an example of this. Right now, if you look at almost all of the mutual fund company sales brochures, these brochures are going to have featured, well, here's the 1-year, 3-year, 5-year performance history. And if you think about it, 5 years is now post-2008's decline or bear market. So it's much easier for a financial advisor to just put together a plan and say, look, we could pick these stellar mutual funds here, and we'll diversify. We don't want all the eggs in one basket now. It's far easier to take that path of least resistance than to go against the herd or go against the stream and educate people on, well, look, you really should have some underlying guarantees in place, and guess what? These guarantees come from the insurance industry, and you need to forget preconceived notions about how certain annuities or life insurance contracts work, and learn how the good ones can work to your benefit. And now, again, we never are advocating that somebody go and put all of their money into insurance contracts or annuities, but we're saying they have their place and they have a role to play, and we want to educate and inform people as to what role they play as part of an overall financial plan.
Yes, I always emphasize that you work with mutual funds, you work with money management, and all the more traditional ways, but this is also part of the overall picture when you create a system. So we can get philosophical here. I know it's part of your belief system that if people can free themselves to think on their own financially, it's going to help them pursue their retirement dreams. They're not going to be tied down. They're not just going to give lip service to the fact that they want to write a book or travel around the world or start a nonprofit organization. They're really going to do it. And I know you work and honor people who are your clients year after year who really have broken the mold. Why do you think that being able to think on your own with respect to your money carries over to other parts of your retirement life?
Well, you know, most people think that, gee, if I have enough money, then I'm going to be free. But if you think about it, all of us would take the point of view that what's enough? Really, if you look at it, we want to be free to do the things that we love to do, to pursue our interests, to be able to spend time with our family, with our children, our grandchildren, our spouse, to, if we want to spend part of the year in a warmer climate, to be able to do that. If we want to be able to help fund our grandkids' education or help them get their first vehicle, we want to be able to do those things. So our point of view is that if you stop running with the herd, if you start thinking for yourself, if you seek out advisors like the advisors on our team, you're going to basically position yourself where you're free, where you're free of limiting beliefs, conventional thinking, and able to live the life that you've always dreamed of.
And you know, we've seen it over and over again where a client or a couple become a really family retirement leader. And it rubs off, which is why Ron Gillick and Associates does no advertising. They get their clients from other clients, by and large, who have been successful, feel confident, exude the confidence. Other people see them and say, how did you manage that? And they said, by being educated, by trusting our advisors, and by thinking outside the box. So I'm going to ask you guys who are listening, are you ready to spend the 15 minutes it takes to get the fear out of retirement and stop running with the herd? If so, you can start with a complimentary consultation with Ronald Gillick and Associates and register for our next webinar. It's called, How Does Discovering Your Financial Blind Spots Lead to Making Better Financial Decisions? Well, you can do both, discover those financial blind spots, and register for a complimentary consultation, all at ronaldgillock.com. That's Ronald's website, ronaldgillock, G-E-L-O-K.com. And Ronald, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Adrienne. Thank you.